that for those of you that do call square dancing Hilton Audio Products, Paul is again talking about he may be shutting the doors on Hilton Audio Products, or something might be passing it on to somebody else. There's a lot of information, but he's put a link on it to Facebook. But it's like many of our activities and many of our supporting machinations and technology behind the scenes. If we don't support the activity, we don't support the suppliers, they're going to disappear, because although a lot of it is a labor of love, it still has to be able to pay for itself. So if you are able to support it, please do. We're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to get started. Hello, everybody, and welcome. A big thanks to Mark Hart. Mark, give us a wave. Mark has been doing our technical aspects in the background for the last year and a half. He has put all the sessions on the website. The first number of sessions that we were doing did not get recorded, but today is a day. Today is our 250th session. And I think of those 250, there's about 180, I think you've got, or 90 or so that are recorded on the on the website. There's about 95 or 100 of them are recorded on the website now. So a lot of material there. And he's also putting on the sessions from Don Beck, Dan Like, as well as the GSI Collar School sessions that were being presented. So that too is a labor of love, and Mark is doing that, hosting it on his own computer software and cloud, because quite frankly, the Collar Lab database and everybody else doesn't have the room for it. So I want to say very big thank you to Mark for all the work he does behind the scenes. Let's get right into it here. There we go. Today's, let's just admit them in there. So I'm going to share my screen here. Hopefully I'll be able to see it. Are you guys able to see my screen okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So as I'm going through, like I said, just pipe in if you have something that's relevant to what I'm saying at the moment, because once I start, I'm not going to be able to see you. So I'm just going to carry on. But what we're going to be talking about today is it says your voice, but it's the voice in itself. And I do want to clarify right off, some of you may have heard most of the meat in this presentation. It's something that I've just updated a little bit, but the vast majority of this presentation is actually taken from Jim Mayo, who is one of the greats in square dancing. And he's produced so many articles, but he talked about the voice and the importance of it as a tool. And that's what I really want to talk about today, is the voice as a tool. And it is the most important tool in your toolbox. Okay. Your voice as a square dance caller is the most important to you. It's the primary connection between you and the dancers. The customers or the dancers, they don't really look at you that much. They don't look at your equipment. They don't look at your cue sheets. They listen. Okay. Some of them will sit on the sidelines and watch, but most of the time, your customers, that's the dancers, they connect themselves with you by one thing, and that's the sound of your voice, how it fits to the music, how effectively it directs them through the dancing, all of that kind of stuff. And the primary function of a square dance caller's voice is to direct the dancers through the action that they're going to go through. So you've got to remember that your voice is the primary connection between you and your customers. That said, there are plenty of callers out there that have been outstandingly successful with voices that were a long way from being great. Many callers, I've told you about, a friend of mine, Mike Turner, were unable to carry a tune in a bucket, but they became very successful callers and have done tremendous things for the square dance activity. So a caller's voice doesn't have to be this great musical instrument, but it does have to be able to communicate to the dancers understandable directions about what that person wants them to do. And your voice as that important tool must be used properly, because without it, you can't communicate. And it doesn't matter how well you can use all those other tools or how good your knowledge is on choreography or formation management or anything else, even showmanship and soft people skills. Without the voice, you can't do any of that. The tools you use to enhance or project your voice are not as important as having control of your voice. You've got to be able to tell the dancers what to do, and they've got to be able to understand, and they've got to be able to hear it. A simple way of putting this in is if you're using the microphone and thinking that's your voice, garbage in, garbage out. Another way in which the voice is useful to the caller is it sets the mood of the dancers. The tone in your voice is what gives you the commands. It gives a great deal of energy to let the dancers know how to react. They can be excited, or they can be, enthusiastic, or you can use your voice to let them relax and sink into a ballad, or if they laugh and feel the emotion of a song, or you can be one of those callers that just uses your voice to have them plod around like a bunch of tired old work mules, just like they were when they came out of work. You can do either one, but it's your voice that actually takes that crowd and makes it into something. It takes a crowd that is overactive, and it can bring them, that overexcited group, down to a level that's manageable, or it can bring up a group that's down to where you want them to be. Your voice can control the mood of the dancers as well as directing them through the actions. In addition, a caller's voice can give the dancers confidence, not only in themselves, but in the caller as well. Okay, they have their own confidence because you're confident. And if you sound confident, as if you know exactly what you're doing, and there's no question, it's going to come out right. And the dancers will assume that it's true and will move without worrying. You'll make mistakes, but they're not going to worry about it because you're confident. Oh, and you just say, oh, I made a mistake with that. Okay, carry on. You're confident. Yeah, you accepted you made a mistake. Doesn't matter to them. However, very often dancers worry on behalf of the caller. And that's because if you sound uncertain or frightened, the dancers are going to be afraid for you. They'll hope that maybe the figure will come out right, but that adds a degree of tension in it for them. And that tension interferes with their dancing pleasure. Whether you know what you're about to do or not, says if you say it as you mean it, even if it's wrong, it'll come out okay. And the dancers will have confidence. They'll make a mistake, you accept the mistake. But even if you're right and you square through 4, you've created that tension and it's not going to work. It doesn't do you a bit of good to mumble. It doesn't do you a bit of good to, talk down into the next call or whatever. Because if you mumble or talk like that, they can't understand. It's wrong. So you might just as well say loudly and clearly, if it's wrong, it's wrong. If it's right, they can do something with it. Say it loud, say it clearly, say it right. It doesn't really matter. The other function that a caller's voice performs is to supplement and strengthen the rhythm of the music. A caller using his voice effectively will help emphasize the rhythm of that music. And in fact, if you're doing a really good job of it, the dancers ought to be able to dance perfectly without the music at all, because the rhythm in the sound of your call should be sufficient to let the dancers dance smoothly and comfortably and stay together in rhythm without the music. Your vocal rhythm should be strong enough to dance to. If it is, then you will be supplementing the music when you have it and help keep that floor moving effectively with the music. And finally, it's an important fact that most dancers form a pretty solid judgment of a caller based on what they hear long before they ever dance to him. They base their initial impression of the caller on the sound of his call. They walk into a hall and say, hey, he sounds great, doesn't he, or doesn't she? They may or may not have danced to that person before, or they generally don't know anything about the choreography that that person's going to be calling. They don't know anything about his timing. They don't know anything about how effectively he teaches. They don't know how well he chooses material and programs the evening, but they judge him or her on the basis of that first brief sound as they walk in during that first tip. And many times, you got to think, have you ever said, wow, isn't that person great? What a tremendous caller. Well, how do you know? Why? Because he's got a great voice that doesn't, he may have a great voice, but that doesn't make him a great caller. However, from the caller's point of view, the dancers are going to make their initial judgment on the basis of the sound of that call, even as they move onto the floor before the whole dance starts. They begin to form an opinion that is based on that initial sound. And if it's one of confidence and effective presentation, then the first impression is a good one. The voice is what dancers judge by first, and that's why it's so important to you. So understanding that, we have to ask ourselves, what is a voice? Okay, you hear it all the time. That person or that person has a voice, don't they? What does that mean when they say, wow, that person's got a voice, or that person's got a great, what are they actually saying? So in order to understand this and in order to investigate how to use your voice correctly and most effectively, you've got to start by understanding what a voice is and how it does its thing, okay? The sound, how do we put this? The sound, the basic noise, okay? It originates in the vocal cord, which is basically a muscle structure. And in fact, I've got people coming in still. In fact, it's two muscles side by side. And when the air passes between those on its way from your lungs out through your mouth, those muscles vibrate. Those are your vocal cords. And depending on how tightly those muscles are stretched, the pitch of your voice will change. So to work effectively and be strong, muscles need exercise, which means your voice needs exercise. The words give your voice meaning. Okay, the first vocal step is to produce sound, but sound isn't what we're talking about since it alone cannot convey a meaning. We can all make sound with our voice and not make any words at all. We've got to turn that sound into words in order to give it meaning. And to do this, we must use the tongue and the lips and interrupt the flow of that vibrating air with the tongue and with our lips. That's how we shape it and make it into the sound that has meaning. So instead of making noise, when we add the effects of the lips and the tongue, we're now gaining words. And our lips and our tongue are also controlled by muscles. And guess what? They need exercise too for best effectiveness. The whole thing has to work together, but you don't want to overdo it. Like any exercise, you don't want to overdo it. So let's get just a little bit of technical stuff here. Pitch. To understand pitch, we've got to understand a little bit about the physics of sound. And essentially, and this is very simplified for all you technical guys, but this is a very, very simple explanation. Vibrating air is what the ears hear as sound. And if the vibrations are slow, say 50 to 100 vibrations per second, that's a very low tone, lower than most of us can sing. Whoa, way down here. Okay. When you get vibrations at about 250 per second, okay, that's middle C on a piano or middle C in pitch. If we increase that to about 500, we've actually increased one octave. Okay, that's eight tones of the scale higher. And each time you double that frequency, you go up an octave. So the faster you vibrate, the higher you go. The slower you vibrate, the lower you go. So that's pitch, the tone of the sound. And it's determined by the frequency at which the air is vibrating. Think of it like a guitar string. The tighter you pull that guitar string, the higher the note. And it's the same for the vocal cords because it vibrates just that much faster because it's tight. But you have to understand that loudness and projection are not the same thing. Loudness depends on the amount of vibration in the vocal cords. The amount of vibration that the vocal cords are doing just as how big a guitar string swings to determine the amount of sound. So if you take a guitar string and you pull it way out and let it go, it's going to make the same sound as if you strum it very, very lightly. It's the same tone, okay? But it's going to be louder. Why? Because the vibrations are just bigger. If we get that louder sound, we generally twit, it's the same pitch, but it makes sound either way. And the sound itself is louder if it's a bigger vibration. You can make your vocal cords vibrate by moving more air across them. You don't have to make it higher. You just put more air through it. However, if you put all that air through to produce a great sound, but close up your mouth and don't let any of it out, you may have made a tremendous sound, but the only person that's ever going to hear it is you. It's in your voice. You have to put the package together. You have to speak with your mouth, with the core opening gap in your mouth, with your lips, with your tongue, and with the projection of that air out. Because if you close your mouth like, you can hear it in your ears, but you can't hear it coming out. Loudness is a louder sound. Okay, it's not projection. In addition to producing that loud sound, you got to get it out to the microphone, and that's what we call projection. Loudness is a louder sound, but projection is getting that sound out. To do that, you've got to open your mouth. Then the sound not only comes through your mouth, but it also comes through your nose, because there's a vibrating column of air that's got to come out both the mouth and the nose to make the sounds and the pitches and the tones that you want. To really understand that, consider recording yourself. You don't hear yourself often through your ears. Now, that's a hard way of thinking about it, but the sound that comes out of your mouth and around and in your ear is a sound that you hear inside your head. The vibration in your head vibrates the same eardrum that activates your brain. So the voice that you hear coming out of you is the voice that's inside your head. It doesn't tell you anything about what's coming out for other people to hear. And this fact explains one of those things, which I'm sure every one of you has faced. Record yourself and listen to yourself, and 99% of the people will say, that doesn't sound at all like me. In fact, it will never sound like you to you, because the sound that you hear inside your head and the one that record, the tape recorder or whatever you use, the one that hears is what comes out of your mouth. And one of the problems with producing good vocal quality is that as soon as you've got the vibrating column of air out of your mouth, it isn't there anymore and you don't hear it. So your voice, when you're doing things right, sounds thin and weak to you. It sounds full and rich to people that are outside of your mouth or outside of your head, but to you, it sounds less than that old wrong way. It sounds less, that doesn't sound right. Use your tape recorder. Your tape recorder doesn't lie. It tells you the way it is. And if you really want to know what you sound like, turn on a recorder and believe it. Don't say, oh, it's a recording device. They never sound like you. There's a reason. Ask your friends. They'll tell you that it sounds like you. You'll never believe it. So you notice this is your low note, wide vibrations. This is the same note, just with a lot more vibrations. This is the same note, but that's quiet and loud at the same vibration frequency. So that's what you got to keep in mind. I want to touch briefly on your microphone. As square dance callers these days, we don't use the big megaphones, and we have all sorts of different microphones, but now what we have is a microphone with a volume control, so we don't need to produce loudness. The volume control, you want louder, just turn it up a bit, okay? For square dance callers, the loudness now is sort of an unnecessary commodity, because we can make it as loud as we want. That doesn't change the fact that we still need projection. We've got to get that sound out of our mouth. It doesn't have to go very far, because no one else is going to hear it coming directly from you. What they're going to hear is what goes into the microphone. And what we do want to do is get all of that sound into the microphone. Some of it is coming out the nose. And if there's that old adage, plant it on your chin. If you do that, you're going to miss the sound. That was designed a long time ago for a reason. I'll explain that in a minute, but there's one problem. Well, let's do it now. The problem with chinning your microphone is microphones are designed to pick up sound across a full range of frequency. And when you get it straight on, that's the best sound. That doesn't mean talking across the top of it or talking into the side of it or holding it way out here. With very directional microphones, it makes a lot of difference when you turn the microphone so that you can talk in the end of it rather than talk across it. And you see people that learn mic technique, how to get the best sound or the sound that they want. Practice with your microphone so you can get the sound that you want, okay? And you can easily hear the difference in quality of the sound that gets picked up by the microphone. To get a full voice quality out to the dancers, keep the microphone about 2 inches away from your mouth, halfway between your mouth and nose. So out here and just in that area, speaking directly into the microphone. Okay. This is a violation of that message that was sent to callers since the beginning of time. Plant the microphone on your chin. That way you won't lose it when you turn your head. It'll go with you. Okay. Well, if you forget to turn your microphone, that can be a big problem, obviously. But most callers and most people are smart enough to say, hey, I'm speaking into the microphone. This is my technique. I'm going to turn my head. I'm going to move the microphone. Otherwise, nobody's going to hear me. It happens very quick. The advantage of improved voice sound from a proper mic placement is tremendous. And if you practice it, you're going to see an absolutely substantial improvement in your calling ability. Let's talk about making words. It's important to make your words very, very carefully. And what you hear is two words, pronunciation and enunciation. A lot of people don't know the difference to them, but pronunciation is related to the words itself, focusing on the syllables that should be emphasized and how certain letters or combinations of letters should sound when they're spoken. Okay. Enunciation refers to how clearly and distinctly a particular individual forms the sounds that makes up that word. Okay. While it's important to pronounce words correctly, the language used is pretty standard across square dancing. And other than accents, there really isn't much difference on how those words are pronounced. However, of more importance to a successful voice in square dancing is enunciation, or some people call it diction. They mean the same thing. This is where that expression garbage in equals garbage out really comes into play. If you go back over your tapes and records and everything else of calls that you've made over a period of time, or you start, you'll very seldom find that you hear the letter D on the end of alamand, near alamand left. You seldom hear the T on right and left. It's a rare day indeed when you hear both the T and the D in movements like alamand left or right and left through. Okay, when you hear it, it's usually a riddly thoo or something to that effect. The vowels are open sounds, and the ones that carry the singing sound, you know, the A, the E, the I, the O, the U, those are the things that hold a note. And when you hold a note, it's one of those sounds. When you end it, you're ending it with a consonant like a T, a D, or a K, as in walk around your corner, see, saw, pass through. If you can enunciate those words right and left through, it becomes much more accurate. And how accurately and completely you make those consonant sounds has a tremendous an effect on how well you get understood coming out of that microphone. Very few callers are careful enough about their diction. Some callers are actually rather sloppy, so you don't even hear the consonants. Consonants, what they do is they give intelligence and understandability to the voice. The T's, the D's, the K's especially, and the C's can be heard, and they must be heard if they're going to give information. Diction, or your enunciation, lets people know what you mean as you speak those words, and it gives meaning to the sound. Diction forms sound into words, and to do that, use both the tongue and the lips. A P, for example, is forced by forming the lips together. An L is formed by the motion of the tongue inside the head. L, the tongue is moving. These two together, the lips and the tongue, are what forms these sounds. Many people talk and hardly move their lips at all, and you see callers doing this, and they manage to get through whole sentences or whole dances without ever moving their lips. To get that maximum clarity, you've got to move the upper lip, the lower lip, use the tongue, use the voice, use everything that comes out of there. Because if you don't, you become a ventriloquist, and we're not ventriloquists. We don't talk without moving our lips. Some callers try it, and it just doesn't sound right. You've got to use the whole mouth. When we talk about sound, we talk about command. You hear command voice. We hear command delivery, command structure. Well, one aspect of vocal technique that doesn't really have very much to do with how you use your voice is confidence. And it's the confidence in which you deliver whatever it is you're saying. We call that the sound of command. It's, as a caller is directing dancers, you should say whatever you say with a great deal of assurance. And that assurance results from a state of mind that you have, knowing that you're prepared and you're sure of what you want to say and what you want to achieve, rather than how you use your voice. It's all up here. You know it. It works. You're confident in it. And it results from being sure of what you're going to say. You must know what you're going to say well enough to say it loudly, to say it clearly, and to say it with confidence. Even if you don't know what you're going to say, you had better say it clearly and with confidence, because if you don't, it won't do you any good anyway. Whether or not you know what's coming next, whatever you say it with confidence. It isn't going to do you any good to have it the other way around. Command or confidence has to do with state of mind only. And it's your state of mind, and you want to project your state of mind into the dancers. The underlying principle is simply know your material, and it'll be easier for you to deliver it with assurance. Okay. If you don't know it and you're not confident in it, that's going to come out through your microphone. There's an old adage that says a microphone, you can hear a smile on the microphone. Yes, that's true, but you can hear fear or hesitation or unpreparedness a lot more than you can hear a smile. Breathing. Breathing is the key to a good voice. And if you're breathing properly, taking air in and letting it out as you call, then the chances of voice troubles are practically zero, because air moving across the vocal cords is going to keep them separated. It's going to prevent them from rubbing together so you don't harm your voice. How good a quality you get will depend on a number of other things, but with proper breathing, at least you won't hurt the vocal cords, and that's what's important. Many callers start out calling once a week. They don't have a problem. You know, I do a tip here, I do a tip there, not a problem. They move up to once a week. But by the time they get to, you know, that success where they're calling 3 nights a week, they suddenly start having vocal problems. And the reason is they stopped breathing somewhere along the line, particularly when they got heavily involved into the choreography. And it sounds weird, but it's true. It's very easy to substitute choreography for breathing. And doing that is bad for your voice. Okay? When your vocal cords rub together, what happens is they develop sore spots. And sometimes these end up having to be surgically treated, causing many, many weeks of inactivity for callers, or even sometimes ending calling careers. Turns out that surgery is often not required. They may be sometimes cured by learning how to use their voice correctly and how to get enough air through your vocal cords to keep them from rubbing together when you produce sound. So for proper breathing, you got to fill your lungs with air first. You see a lot of callers that get up on stage and the first thing they do is just like divers. They take 3 deep breaths, then they fill their lungs and let a little bit out, because the lungs are in the chest and they're activated by the diaphragm just sitting below there. And this is a muscle that goes horizontally underneath the lungs. It gives the lungs room to expand, and the diaphragm drops, and now the lungs can fill with air. You don't need to suck air in. It gets pushed in by atmospheric pressure. All you need to do is create a space for that air to push itself in. But you've got to be able to create that space. And to do that, you can't keep your lungs full all the time. You have to leave room there for it to happen. And to do that, you have to expand the diaphragm downward. When you want to get rid of the air, you blow out by diaphragm action. And this, you know, it's all the diaphragm that makes it happen. If you want to see how that works, just take a deep breath, hold a note, and then just start pushing just underneath your breastbone where your diaphragm is. Ah, that's what's going to happen. That's what your diaphragm does. It's not here. That's just the source of the air. It's controlled by your diaphragm. Most people, when breathing, do it by raising or lowering the chest. This works adequately for most purposes. You know, you see it. I'm gonna fill my chest up and raise it up. It doesn't fill your lungs as full as they can be. What you really want it to do is get that space available for your lungs to expand as much as possible. So you must expand your chest fully. I'm not talking take a deep breath. I'm talking about giving your chest room to take in air, and then never let it collapse again. And you see some of the great callers that are up there, they're standing tall and their chest is out and they're there, but they're relaxed, because what they're doing is they're giving that all that room, instead of here where they're putting pressure on it, all that room for air to go in, and then they're just relaxing to allow the air to come in and out. Okay. All the time that you're doing that, you don't allow your chest to collapse. And all the time you're doing that, you're breathing. What you want to try and do is keep that chest fully expanded. It shouldn't collapse as you push air out with the diaphragm. And, you know, if you place one hand on your stomach and one hand on your chest, your stomach is what should be moving when you're breathing properly. And you see people doing deep breath and they raise their chest up now. But if you take a deep breath normally and relax, It's usually your stomach that goes out further than your chest. Breathe in and breathe out. Okay, proper breathing action is below the chest. Okay, the chest needs to stay expanded the whole time. It needs to be up. You need to have air in it, but it needs to be comfortable. Diaphragm breathing itself is fast because all you have to do is expand the diaphragm, not pick up the chest. The shoulders and the whole rib cage, all that, your diaphragm is going to do all that because you're here. And if all that is already expanded, then you can get a lung full of air very, very rapidly. If, on the other hand, the whole works collapses and you run out of air because you talked and you haven't taken a breath and everything else, and you see people when they keep talking like this and they don't take a breath, their best. You can hear it in my voice right now. It's changing. It's taking that tone. In order to get air, what I've got to do is I've got to pick up the shoulders. You can see I'm down here. I've got to pick up the shoulders. I've got to expand the chest. And I've got to go through all those physical things. I got to do 3 full things instead of 1, staying this way and just going, I'm full. I'm empty. I'm full. I'm empty. 1 thing instead of 3. Once you've started breathing properly, you don't ever let that chest collapse, particularly when you're calling. If you can really do that, then you don't have to think about anything else as far as breathing goes. It's going to happen naturally. And if you can keep the chest expanded, then when you need air, the whole process tends to take care of itself. And you can expand the stomach and the diaphragm very quickly, and your lungs are going to automatically fill with air. So good breathing with expanded lungs, they're kept half to 3/4 full with short, refillable diaphragm breaths. You can sing, and you usually, square dance is metered so that you can take that short breath in and always maintain a clear tone and a sound that is not strained. You've always got air flowing to keep your vocal cords apart and give you the sound that you want. And it's the sign of a good, well-developed calling muscle. When I talk about my calling muscle, I'm always doing this, but that's just because I got a big fat belly. That's not what it is. So it's a tool. And like any tool, you have to look after your tools. Okay. Now that we've described the characteristics of the voice and you know how it's produced and how that sound comes up and how it operates, we need to talk about the care and feeding of that voice. Okay. The vocal cords are muscles which do their thing by being tightened and being loosened while they vibrate. Okay. They're muscles, and like all other muscles, with proper exercise, they will strengthen and improve. Using your voice doesn't by itself cause you trouble, but like any tool, it can be used in a number of ways. However, like any tool, using your voice improperly can and will cause trouble. If you're using it correctly, it will improve and strengthen with use. It's that simple. Okay. To start off the first tip in the evening with your most powerful singing call, and you're going to wail on it and wail, that's a mistake. And a lot of callers, especially new callers, make that mistake. On the way to the dance, you should be warming up a little bit. You should be practicing your warm up, A, E, I, O, U, la, 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 doing scales, whatever you do to warm your voice up and getting it functioning properly. One important part of this and one important purpose of such an exercise is to remind you to get sound also through your nose. You've got to have it coming out both the nose and the mouth to get those full vowel sounds. An exercise that does this and is particularly good in the morning to get started is humming. Humming is a sound which comes particularly through the nose. Okay? You don't want to hum a song to say, oh yeah, I can hum to that singing call, and great, because it's a completely different set of tones and sounds that are going to come out. But humming comes through the nose, and it has to come out through the nose, and it exercises that. The mouth is closed and you push a volume of air through the nose to remind you to feel that vibration of the nose. Then you open your lips and you change the sound into a full open sound. Ha, 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 ha. And remember, the sound is still coming through your nose and you're keeping it there. All the vowel sounds that you have when you're calling should be up in this area. Okay, you can also warm up your voice in the car on the way to the dance. But in the car, it's important not to sit slumped over while trying to produce that sound. You still need to sit, expand the chest, bring it up. You need to get air that's flowing, and you need to use it from the diaphragm. Okay. You need that feeling that you want to reestablish with your warm-up exercise. Your voice is a muscle, and you want to get it warm before using it hard. One way of thinking about this is the muscle relationship is a person that runs races and he's about to enter a race. That person does not run in, take a cold shower just before the race after he's warmed his muscles up. Okay. The runner, like your voice, can last a lot longer at a good pace with warm muscles. And although after a long run, a runner's muscles may be tired, after a long session, your voice may be tired, they will recover very quickly and they will become stronger and they'll be able to go further. However, no matter how good it may feel, if you don't warm up your voice, warm up and you use your voice hard and fast for long periods of time without it being warm, your throat will begin to feel sore and it projects out in your voice. You can hear when somebody's got a sore throat. You can short-term fix that with a nice ice cold drink and it's going to feel great on the throat. But you're likely causing a lot more damage because what you're doing is you're actually freezing the vocal cords so they don't feel that they're strained and they're vibrating and they're rubbing together. And what you're going to do, although you've given a short-term fix, you're actually causing a lot more damage. Okay. Don't pour cold water or cold soda on your vocal cords when you're calling. In fact, ideally, don't pour anything cold. You see everybody gets a nice cold drink of water and they want that. Okay. I like a glass of warm water, or for me personally, coffee. I've always got coffee. Okay. Your vocal cords don't like a cold bath in the middle of a performance. Anything hot, such as coffee, tea, or even hot water, which is my, or just above warm water is my preference when I'm calling. But something hot, if there's nothing else around, drink anything hot, nothing cold. If you don't want to get into the shower, and give it a cold bath, great. When it's all over, if you want to go and give it a cold bath, great. Not while you're calling. While you're using that muscle, never give it a cold bath. You want to keep it warm. You want to be good to your voice, and your voice is going to be good to you. Now, there's a lot of technical stuff that I've gone through there, but essentially, your voice is a muscle. Your vocal cords are a muscle. Warm them up, keep them warm, look after it, and it will look after you. It needs exercise. You've got to use your whole mouth, your whole voice, your whole being to project out your nose, your mouth, your posture, your breathing. Everything is going to work together. Because without that one tool, your voice, you've got nothing. I don't care how good a choreographer you are. I don't care how good your knowledge of formation management or your knowledge of the definitions or your technical ability, your ability to sight call, your ability to sight resolve. It means absolutely nothing if you can't get that message out. So that's the presentation for today. I'll just quickly look in the chat to see if, Mark, did we have any questions in the chat? You're muted, Mark. The dance caller started his first tip.
There we go. Okay, no, none. I didn't get none.
Nope. Right. Now, we've all had nights where we've had a night where our voice is just gone. I know for me, I used to have a thing, it's called Buckley's Mixture in Canada. It is absolute crap. It basically tastes like you're drinking raw ammonia and honey.
But
it clears out your sinus, but it is probably one of the best things because you drink that warm for your voice. I have gone through nights with terrible, terrible vocal problems, and it's great. Other people have different techniques. The secret is never, 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 ever something cold. Because if you're warmed up and it's just like doing everything really, really, really hard and then jumping into an ice cold bath, your body doesn't like it. Your voice doesn't like it. So let's open it up for discussion. I'm sure some people have had instances where their voice is gone. Let's talk about it as a tool.
I've never had any problems having cold beverages while I'm calling. I'm constantly drinking Coke while I call, always.
Yeah.
And
one of the things,
never had any
one
problems.
of the things that's on that is the syrup. The syrup in the Coke acts very, very similar to the honey. If it's ice cold, you can strain your voice, especially if you're going to be pushing. one of the things that happens with a lot of syrupy drinks or sodas is it's kind of like putting a lubricant on. It's a false sense of security. If you're going to be calling a lot, you can do damage. But then again, some people don't have problems. Then again, some smokers live to be 110 too. So you're one of the lucky ones.
Yep, I've never had any problems. I think the only time I had a problem was in Little Rock. There was one of the rooms that they were dancing in. They were doing some construction right next door, and all of the dust from the construction was causing the callers to lose their voices.
Yep.
So
one of the exercises I was given when I was starting off in Germany as far as voice is every caller should get up and do an entire evening without a microphone and without a PA system. You got the music playing, but you call a dance without a microphone, and you learn to project your voice. And if you can do that in a whole night without, Guido Shea, you know this exercise from Germany, don't you? If you can do this for an entire night, you're learning how to project your voice and learning the techniques of controlling your voice. Then you can start getting to you without getting a sore throat. Then you can start using a microphone to adjust your volume because you already know how to project.
that almost sounds like hazing.
No, it's actually a very good exercise. It's something that comes from the military. There's an old adage. We had a sergeant major, a chief warrant officer actually, who could whisper across a parade square, and it was really, really effective. He knew how to project his voice. One day we had the chief of defense staff coming on, and I was on a drill instructor's course, and the chief of defense staff was walking around and doing his thing, and the young girl that was in charge stopped, said, "Would you like to inspect the troops? Would you like to do any of this kind of stuff?" And I didn't know it at the time. He had actually set her up for this, but he came over and did that, and then it was over, and he was interfering with the class she was teaching. And she stopped. She was trying to do everything right, and finally the sergeant major, or the chief who was over under the tree, says, "If you're not going to listen to her, you get your ass off my parade square." And this was to the chief of defense staff for the Canadian Armed Forces. And it was just a whisper, but you could hear it. We were on the other side of the parade square. Now, we also found out after the fact that he had set that up to prove his point. But one of the exercises that he used to do is we would stand on one side of the parade square, and on the other side of the parade square, which is about the size of a football field, and you got 10 people down each side, all giving drill commands to your opposite on the other side of the parade square. And you had to make yourself heard over the other 10 people that are all giving commands at the same time. You had to learn to project. That's an extreme. But when I started calling in Germany in 1981, that was one of the exercises, is you called without the microphone. The music was down, it was low, but you had to learn to use your voice to project and everything else, and do that without getting a sore throat. And it was exercise, it was practice. Daryl, I saw you waving your hand there.
Oh, well, yes, I do that a lot. I gotta lower that hand there. Anyway, as far as voice and the breathing, if you think of a bagpipe, the bagpipe never goes flat. What happens is the guy's there all the time, replenishing the air. Any breaks that you have, replenish the air. As far as pushing for any notes or anything, not necessary. Use your voice properly. The high notes, a lot of people say, "I gotta get this out, push it out." You don't. Think of a bird landing on a wire. It just comes down easy. It should be relaxed. The more relaxed you are, the easier it is to hit the notes that you need. As far as cold drinks, I always have an ice cold drink. I don't take large swallows, but I sip, just keep my throat nice and moist. And as far as it affecting, folks, I used to do, through the winter times, I used to do up to 18 dance sessions per week.
Mhm.
And I always had a Diet Pepsi. alongside of me. Never a problem for me. I don't think it has a whole lot to do. Now, if your throat has a tendency to phlegm up, get gooey stuff in it, you might want to watch what you're drinking.
Yeah.
I certainly wouldn't want a milkshake up there.
Yeah.
But other than that, I
Milk
don't.
and dairy is probably one of the big things to avoid. Absolutely.
Yeah, especially for some people. But I don't think hot and cold has a whole lot to do with it.
Yeah. It's one of the things that I want to, like, any of your vocal coaches, any of your singing instructors, anybody that does this for long periods of times and long performances, there are many, many singers, there are many callers that love an ice cold drink. There's others that and like I said, it's like smoking. Some smokers will live to 100. Sometimes it will affect you, sometimes it won't. If you are one of those people that you're calling, and I didn't have a problem until I started calling about 5 nights a week. And yeah, I started getting a sore throat, and I knew my breathing was properly, but I used to drink a lot of cold drinks, and I used to really wail. I love to wail on some of these, I was a big push performer. I found that when I switched to warm drinks, that problem went away. I'm not advocating, I'm not saying you must do this, as and I defer to Daryl. Daryl has been calling probably longer than I've been on the planet. And I'm just kidding, Daryl. But
hey, no, but I probably,
but if it works,
probably called more dance sessions than anybody else on here.
Not an argument with that at all.
You used to be, when I was working the resort parks, like I say, 18 dance sessions per week for 5 months out of the year.
Mhm.
And then the rest of the year I was doing on the road doing calling. But when I used to apply for the national convention, they always asked, how many dances per year do you call? Mine was always over 450.
Yep.
So that's a lot.
There is another
problem.
aspect to that as well, Daryl, is when you're calling that much, you're exercising those muscles. And because you're exercising those muscles,
not
they
these
can take,
muscles. I would come back from my
they can take
summer road.
a lot more and stand a lot more. You take a person that's never called before and put them in the same
Proper use, Mel.
proper use.
It's not here. It's the
Yeah.
breathing. And when I would come back from my summer road tours where I was only calling 1 dance a day, and I went back into the resorts, it took me at least 2 weeks to stop having backaches just from the breathing. Just from breathing properly, to draw that air in, down, and like he says, the diaphragm draws it down in. Well, once you draw it down in, that's where the muscles take over, because you have to meter that air out just enough to make the noise. And you never let that bagpipe bag get empty. And basically that's what it is. You just keep filling it, but you have to hold it.
And when you're breathing properly and you have that in, that's one of the nice things about square dance music, is the metering of it, because there are pauses through. Usually every 8 or 16 beats, there is a pause for you to take that little breath. And if you've got good posture and good breathing and your lungs are half to 3/4 full all the time, you can fill them with just a quick, that's it. And your posture's right, it becomes automatic. That breath becomes automatic. Good breathing is the key to anything. And if you've got the good breath, you can exercise the muscles, you can get the full tones, you can get the sounds. One thing that was also mentioned there was hitting a high note. The best expression I ever heard was, you should never, ever try to hit a high note or hit a low note. You should sing a high note, you should sing a low note, but you should never try to hit one, because if you're trying to hit it, means you're not breathing properly. You deliver the high note because you practice it and you're ready and you're going to do it. And it's essentially the same thing. That was from Tony Oxendine, that gave that at one of his caller schools. He says, you should never try to hit a note. You want to deliver that note because you know you can do it. Because if you're trying, you're straining.
Sometimes, depending on what I've had for dinner, I might have bad breath that evening. As opposed to good breath, which you were talking about earlier.
But I'll tell you what,
That's the low note.
it takes more air to make a low note than it does a high note.
Absolutely.
And the whole secret to saving your throat and getting everything done is proper breathing and proper use of that air. Like I say, high notes, if you're capable of reaching it anyway, you don't have to reach for it. You just let it happen. Relax,
Absolutely.
think it, it'll go there. The low notes, you're going to have to make darn sure that you have enough air to move those vocal cords. Very important.
Long, slow vibrations, and they are hard to sustain. I have a wonderful respect for people that can hit that range of high and low not simultaneously, but within the same tune. And there's a few songs that actually do that. I'm never able to do it. I can hit a low note, I can hit a high note as far as my delivery goes, but I struggle to get that range high and low within the same. And a lot of the time what I'll do is I'll find a way and I'll flatline out because I won't be able to reach it. I know I'm going to have to struggle to push to try and get there. And whether I get there 1 out of 2 times, to me, that's not enough for the dancers.
But you even have to you have to do it in your own language,
Yes.
while some of us have to do it in a foreign language. And I noticed that there was a comment in right and left through. I mean, I was amongst some of the most famous caller coaches, and they told me you have to say right and left through in 2 beats. Well, of course, right and left through, that's 4 beats. If I have to do it among Europeans.
It is one of the aspects of calling, and Japanese callers, European callers, and Russian callers that call in English have the same thing.
We don't speak about Russian now.
No, but what I've noticed is when they're doing it, we had a session on delivery time, command time, and execution time. So when they deliver, they have to set up how many beats is that going to take me to say that command? How long is it going to take me to say that command and still leave 2 beats of music to execute that command and where it goes? And what Guga is saying is absolutely correct. Right and left through, you can hear the T, you can hear the oo, you can hear the th. In English, it's easy to go right and left through. To get good enunciation and that good diction out, you would say right and left through, 4 beats of music. So they changed the metering of their command time, that delivery, to allow them to get that full diction pronunciation. And you will hear really, really good callers in any language will do that. They don't try and force good pronunciation and good diction or good enunciation out and squeeze it in. They adjust their timing accordingly. Almost all of your delivery can be done in 2 beats of music. Almost all, like spin, chain, and exchange the gears cannot. Right and left through, yes, it can, but sometimes you do have to adapt. What you don't want to have is do a riddle through and a rattle left through and then we go with an element. And that's what you hear a lot. Riddly through an element, and these little chop things with no vowels, no consonants, just a noise, and hope the dancers are going to translate what they think you want. Excellent comment, Guga. Daryl, you had your hand up.
Yeah, the subject of right and left through and how many beats it takes. It takes 2 beats of 2/4 music. That's why the boom chuck rhythm is so good for what we do, because you do the right and left through. So you've got the down, up, right and left through. 2 beats. And most of our movements take 2 beats to say. Swing through, pass through, right and left through, dive through, past the ocean. They're all done 1, 2, 1, 2. That's why when you run into something like Zoom, you're going along, they say center Zoom because it takes 2 beats to say it. Then I know erase, erase, erase. I never said center Zoom. But right and left through, yes, 2 beats. Use the down beats and the up beats of 2/4 music, boom chuck music. That's very, very important to sound.
It is,
properly.
and ideally, that's the delivery that everybody strives to. But what Guga was saying is absolutely correct. When you're working in a different language, the structure and your diction will sometimes be adapted to allow that, not just to allow the words to come out in a foreign language, but to allow others to understand that language. And there's nothing wrong with it. The good callers will find a way to adapt. So they'll take right and left through. With the extra time in there, we'll actually sometimes have 3 beats, and they'll get that precursor to it to get the delivery out with clear diction because of the accent, because the harshness of the accent. I'm trying to remember the caller's name. Lothar Weidisch was a caller in Germany that I knew quite well. Now, his English and his calling was so heavily accented for American dancers and Canadian dancers, but he was easy to dance to because his delivery was timed to give us that delivery of the word that we could actually hear it, interpret it, and dance to the beat. That was an adjustment that he made when I first started calling to him so that we could understand him. And everywhere you go, you're going to find every caller, even callers, if you go to Texas and then you go to Boston and you get somebody from Boston and calling in Texas or vice versa, they're going to make little adjustments in how they pronounce and how they announce, if that's a word, how they enunciate their words to allow the dancers to succeed if they're successful callers, because sometimes even accents can make a big difference. But Daryl is also correct. Most everything that you do in square dance, most of the calls, 2 beats. It's designed to be delivered in 2 beats. Everything else is an adjustment, and that falls down to judgment and showmanship. Barry, how are you? Haven't seen you in a while.
Morning. I'm very, very well.
Mickey, is that your hand up?
Yes, sir.
Sir? I'm confused now.
No, before COVID, I was calling well over 350 dances for the past 25 years. And so being on the road full time, voice is a very important thing. And when the voice gets a little bit sore or a little bit weak and you feel something coming up, a tea with sage can be very good if you gargle with it, or just keep it in your mouth in order to get back in shape and regaining your voice. So this may be very useful for someone who feels that he's getting a cold or he has a problem with the throat and with his voice. You should not overdo it, but a sage tea can always help if you gargle it and keep it in your mouth. On the other hand, with what Guga said with pronunciation or foreign language, there is no excuse for any foreign language. It's practice, 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 and record yourself, and then maybe you have others taped, and it's all practice until it sounds the way you want it to sound. Foreign language is no excuse. Yeah.
Have you ever heard Western or Scandinavian English?
It doesn't
Or
matter
Danish
if it's
English?
or any other dialect. I don't care,
Mickey, I would liken the difference in language to me learning German by my landlady who was teaching me, who spoke and was raised and had a very heavily accented pronunciation, and she was from Schwäbisch Gmünd. Yes, it was German. Nobody else could understand me. She could.
Sometimes, yeah, all right.
Well, that's like a foreign language calling square dancing in English. Yes, eventually it does take practice. It does take, but you adapt so people can understand. For those of you that don't understand Schwäbisch Gmünd, it's for you Canadians, it's like somebody from Vancouver speaking to somebody from Newfoundland. Or for the States, it's
from Louisiana.
Yeah, Louisiana Creole trying to speak to somebody from Washington State.
Yeah, but anyway, it doesn't mean the language. Even if it's English dialects or accents or whatever, the same way you got to practice, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that goes down to the callers will adjust, but as Daryl said, eventually record yourself, practice, practice, and practice, because 90% or more, probably a lot more than that, of the delivery of command words in square dancing is done in 2 beats. I just wanted to say, Daryl, when you say center zoom, go away, go away, go away. I was in a discussion recently and they were talking about center zoom. And the setup was heads, touch a quarter, center zoom. No, sorry, there was the touch a quarter, box, circulate, center zoom.
Yeah, you're off topic.
And
off topic.
I said,
there,
yeah,
Carl.
you can do it. And my reaction was that there's always going to be an exception where it's correct, but that's not a habit. That's just somebody doing it properly.
You're way, way, way off topic.
Yeah, I know.
That's a whole thing all by itself.
I know. It struck me in my head because I saw a few eyes go up that were involved in that discussion. I went, oh yeah, okay, I'll say it now and get it off the table. Mark, and then John.
I don't know. This to me, I noticed I've recorded myself a lot, and the one thing I really noticed that helped me with my breathing was I did the song. I like a lot of wordy songs that got a lot of words in them, that it's hard to find time to breathe. And I found the one thing I noticed when I did the song the best was times that I was actually having fun with the song, not just trying to sing the song, having fun with the song. It just, I don't know if that, to me, it makes a difference. You got to be in the mood for the song is what I'm trying to say. And it helps the breathing a lot.
Yeah, mentally and physiologically, you're absolutely correct. The kinesthetic and the psychological behind that is solid, because you'll notice people when they're having fun are more upright, they're more erect, they're gregarious, and their action is there. Well, what they're actually doing is they're opening up, they're throwing the shoulders back because they're open, they're expanding the chest cavity to allow the breathing in for that deep belly laugh, and they're having fun. It's a natural physiological reaction that comes from the psychological aspect, and all of that energy and all of those bits and pieces in your brain that say, hey, I'm having a good time, cause your body to react correctly. And you create that open expanse where you are having fun with the music. And you'll see callers that are really enjoying, they're getting up and they're going to wail, they're going to be up like this, and they're singing to the mic up there. Well, what they've done is they've totally expanded that, and they can really get those notes out. And they'll bring the microphone out here, but they're going to project in because they've got so much air and volume coming in. But if you get somebody that's really struggling, and you'll see it, somebody that's really hesitant, they usually hold the cable here, and they bring their elbows in, and they curl up, and they start compressing their chest, and they go head square through, and they're stopping that natural reaction. There is a physiological response to that, but you're absolutely correct. John, you had a comment.
Yeah, when I was in the 80s and 90s calling up to 3 times a day, I would always have a thermos, and I'd put 1 teaspoon of honey in, and then topped up with a liter of lukewarm water. And I found that I could call the 3 sessions a day, no trouble at all.
Yep. Honey is a pacifier, and it's one of those things that is used all the time. Tea and honey is great for a sore throat, mainly because it coats the vocal cords and it acts as a lubricant. But as I said, as Daryl was saying, as Mickey was it Mickey? No, Brian was saying, what works for you works for you. Ice cold soda, any voice coach or vocal coach will say that is the worst thing you could ever do and ever have when you're singing. Guess what? It works for some people. I know professional singers that have been doing that, and that's all they drink is ice cold soda. If it doesn't bother you, it's probably because you've exercised those vocal cords to the point where they can take a lot more. For a brand new caller, it's something I wouldn't recommend to start calling, 300 dances or 500 dances a year and drink ice cold water, and you've never practiced and strengthened that vocal cord. Daryl, you've got your hand.
All of you are sitting there right now and you are breathing properly. You're all relaxed and you're breathing properly, the same kind of breathing that you'll want to do when you're calling. The difference is the size of breath you take. The caller schools, I'm fairly retired from that now, other than working with some callers on a weekly basis. When I had the schools, some of the first things I did with the students was have them get up and say, okay, I want you to take a deep breath. And they go, and I know the minute their shoulders started to rise that they didn't know how to breathe for what we do. The shoulders should never rise. And all of that breath. Now, if you've got somebody that you can trust to put their hands around your waist and hold in on it, and then you take a breath and it forces their hands and their fingers apart, that's when you're breathing right. If it doesn't do that, then all your breathing is up here and you're not going to get proper air for what you need to do. So that's where you want to practice. If you want to actually practice, you can lay down on your back, put a few books on your stomach, your abdomen, and breathe with the idea of raising those books. That's going to make that diaphragm come down and it's put the air where you want it, and you'll be able to get a full. Yeah.
I don't know if you can see me here, but this is where that expression, your calling muscle, come in. And people go like, you'll see a lot of callers. I've got a well-developed calling muscle.
Yeah.
Now it's come to mention that it's like, oh, this is my stabilization unit, or Mel's got a big fat belly because he's lazy. But what Daryl's saying is right. If you're breathing correctly, your chest is out, you breathe. It's not going to be all here because that's already expanded. It's going to be here. It's going to be the diaphragm, and the diaphragm is going to do this. That little short. And what Daryl's saying, you breathing correctly, push in here, your fingers are going to get pushed apart. And that is your calling muscle.
The diaphragm is a bowl-shaped muscle that goes down like this.
Yep, absolutely.
And it draws that air in. And it's up to you to hold it. And like I say, meter it out slowly. Don't let it get gone. Take another breath when you can. But you're going to feel it. Just right down around your back. I wound up with backaches, like I say, for a couple of weeks, just from the tension of holding that air. You do get past that if you're doing it properly. A baby, watch them sleeping. Their little tummies just going up and down all the time, but they're breathing properly.
That's the bowl that he's talking about. That's where your breathing and all the activity occurs. That's your diaphragm. Were you done, Daryl?
Yes, I'm just
okay. I just saw your
get rid of that now.
Mickey.
Yeah, all that's been said is okay with getting the breathing and training the diaphragm and keeping the shoulders down and not going with the chest heaving. But when singing, we should not put so much stress on the breathing. A cousin of mine, she started singing, and she said that breathing is a natural thing, and you don't have to. Or let's put it that way: you should not concentrate on the breathing, okay? Yep. Because it will happen. You have to breathe, and what you have to check with the songs is where the breathing or where is a break or little consonants at the end. Yeah, if you make a consonant at the end, you will take little breaths, which will fill up the air again. So you should not take all, when you're singing a song, especially like Mark said, with a lot of lyrics, you couldn't go ba 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 ba. Yeah, right.
Absolutely.
You would
the place to
to
Go ahead.
breathe is important, but you should not really put the focus and concentrating on when you're doing your calling. Okay, of course you gotta train the proper breathing, but it should happen as natural as it is. Like you made the example with the baby. Yeah, it has to be there, but it should happen by itself.
It
Okay.
won't happen by itself if you don't, like you say, train
Right.
to do it. It's make it an automatic thing, but the only way to do it is be conscious of what you might not be doing. And I'll tell you right now, if you're doing it badly and you're doing a lot of calling, you're going to get these stress nodules on your vocal cords. You're going to be going in for surgery.
Right.
So you
And
just
a
don't-
lot of it,
don't
and you're
mess
right,
with it.
Mickey, a lot of what you have to do, the place to practice your breathing is when you're not calling, is to develop
Right.
that habit. I think that's what you're actually referring to as well, Daryl.
Yeah.
You've got to learn to make that proper breathing part of your natural habit so that when you are calling, that natural habit comes through and you can concentrate it on other things.
That
that are
also
maybe a
goes
little
with
more important.
singing or with talking, right?
Mhm.
She said this is breathing is a natural effect, a natural reflex, which we do have. Okay, and it doesn't always have to be those big deep breaths, but you need to fill up constantly, especially depending on what song type you sing, how long
Mhm.
you have a chance to take a breath. Okay, but it always has to come natural. Singing is totally a natural type thing. And of course, you need to, like everything, like with walking, running, you got to train the muscles. You need to exercise them. Yeah.
Yep.
But when playing soccer or football, and then you have to concentrate on how do I have to run, you're losing the game. Okay. So
I really like the analogy that was given of the bagpipes because, and I love the pipes and I love the pipes and drums. But if you watch a piper, he could be playing Scotland the Brave or Amazing Grace or a long ballad or the fastest jig. His breathing or her breathing is the same for what all the work is done in the fingers, but the breathing is slow breath to fill the bag, slow breath to fill the bag, slow breath to fill the bag, deep breath while the bag is full, slow breath to fill the bag. And their breathing is metered and it's the same. It goes with their marching cadence. It doesn't really matter what they're playing. Their breathing is measured, it's paced, it's proper, and it goes with whatever they're doing. So it's fast or slow. They've got that air in the sack, so to speak. And as Mark says, I love songs with a lot of lyrics. My favorite song is I've Been Everywhere. And then the other one is The Auctioneer. And when I was singing regularly, the challenge was, can I get all 4 verses of The Auctioneer out in one breath? And yes, I managed to do that once or twice, but it's hard. But you can only do that if you practice, 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 and you keep it there.
And therefore,
Sorry.
I'm 100% with Daryl. And then I'd like to add, like in calling, it's so much easier than just singing, because when we do the singing calls, okay, that's one part. The other one is the pattern. But in the singing calls, how much do we do the singing in the tag or in the text line? That's where we do the singing, but the rest is all calling, and our calling is metered, okay? And we always can take breaths when we're calling. We got to be aware of that, okay? So this is always kind of a same type rhythm type thing when we're calling and getting those out within 2 beats, those commands. There's always time to breathe when we're calling. With the singing, we have to especially see where we can take the breath, how much air do we need with the lyrics or whatever, how the song goes. Do we have to carry a long note, or do we have a lot of lyrics and have short taka 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 type thing, music phrases? That's what you have to look about when singing, and this comes then within the breathing, and then maybe you have to make a note where would be good to take a breath.
Mhm. Yeah. Square dance calling is one of those activities that is metered for good breathing. I love it because, for me,
You'll know-
when I
you'll
had
know
the
if you're
treadmill, I
not
used to
doing it
get on the
right.
treadmill and I found it very easy to actually do the treadmill and call at the same time because I'd set the music going. That would be my pacing and my breathing. And you could go forever on it.
You'll know when you're not doing it right.
Oh,
You'll
yes.
you'll start getting a sore throat. That's when you start telling yourself, well, Daryl, you're doing it wrong. And start breathing properly, getting good air.
Hello.
Everything kind of smooths out. So it's one of the most important things that you can learn how to do if you're going to be a caller doing any amount of calling. Singing,
Yeah.
that's part of calling, but breathing does not make you a good singer. Some people
Breathing doesn't make you a good caller either.
No, I know. We said that we have singers that call and callers that sing. I always kind of figured I was kind of a caller that sings because I never figured I was much of a singer. But I had people fooled for some time.
See, I've got an advantage because even our sewing machine is a singer.
Yeah, there you go.
But, I have a question. When I went, well, sometimes to learn to play a clarinet, there were actually breathing notes in the score, where you were supposed to breathe before you put the right note in. I've never used them in calling though.
Interesting. I never saw that.
No, it was an apostrophe.
Yeah.
When you were supposed to breathe in.
Maybe that was for that particular person that just
Or
figured
that
they needed
particular
that
instrument.
reminder or something. I don't know. I've never seen that in music. But what I know, I'm a caller.
It's called well, they call it a breath mark or a Luftpause, which is essentially that, but you'll see in a lot of musical scores what it is. It's like a big comma at the top of the musical score. And what that is, it's you won't see it in percussion, but you'll see it in wherever you have a woodwind or wherever you have a breath instrument like a trumpet. Any of the wind instruments or any vocals, they have what's called a breath score. And that is usually it's put in if the song is not metered, or if the song is metered, it's to say, take a breath here because you're going to need to fill up your lungs because there's something big coming up that you're going to have to hold this for a little bit. So what they do is they put a big black comma, and it's usually at the top end of the musical scale. It's called a Luftmark, but that's exactly what it's for.
We should do that for square dance callers.
Yep.
And then all they'd have to do is have,
Relay the deuce.
have another computer screen with all that on it so they could keep their, now erase. Get rid of it.
But if you pull up musical scores, what you'll usually see is you'll see that at the end of a phrase or above a staff note, or if you have a rest, like a rest note, you'll see that if there's something coming up. And but that's what it is. And a lot of people mistake it for a musical note, but it's not a musical note. It's just say, take a breath here.
Yeah, it's a hint.
Yeah. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, I just want to make clear that I'm not misunderstood, that everything what Daryl said, I absolutely admit and go what breathing consists. I just wanted to make sure that it really has to be practiced and it needs to become natural, right?
Yes.
And in all the years that I've been calling, the only one problem that arose with me is when there was air condition. When there was tough air condition, I could go and call for hours and have no problems. But after 1 hour within an air conditioned room, I could tell you there was air conditioning on, even when it was really, really low. And then what I tried to do is to drink a lot of water, or maybe have the air condition in a certain area switched off, if that was possible. If not, then you just had to go along. But yeah, I was always drinking a lot of water, still do. I sometimes did drink Coke. I stopped that when I had a dance and with another caller, and we went on for a singing call, and I had to belch because I had too much of a Coke, whatever. And I was no chance of getting the microphone so fast away, so it went right over, and I apologized, of course, yeah, and said, okay, this was a singing call. It all came out at once. But Yeah. So
That was supposed to be a
maybe-
high note, not a low note, huh?
Yeah. So you maybe got to be careful with the gas in the drinks.
Yeah.
That's one thing. Another thing I realized with me is that I shouldn't eat an hour before I do call, because so I have enough place there to breathe and not be totally stuffed. And I'd rather eat after I did call, but maybe have a little bit thing, or coffee and cake, and even coffee. If I drink that, I used to drink that in the first maybe 10 years regularly with a dance with water and mixed, but I don't do anymore because it also may cause some belching. So at least a half hour before I call, I stop doing all that stuff. And all I have on stage then is water, but everybody got to find out what works for him. This is just
That's
my
true.
experience, and yeah, just to share.
I only drink lukewarm coffee. When I come to the place, what's the coffee? And then I bring the coffee. That's okay. So I just keep to that lukewarm coffee. That's
One of the things that we didn't really touch on, you mentioned air conditioning, and yeah, it can actually affect your calling, as can dust. Sweeping a hall out before a dance because there's something on the floor and you've got the air circulation blowing. All of those things can affect you. And you want to keep your throat lubricated, but you want to keep it warm. But I know just from experience calling in Canada, there are times where it can be 40 to 45 degrees below zero. For those of you that are dealing with Fahrenheit, 40 degrees is 40 degrees below zero. It doesn't really matter if it's Fahrenheit or Celsius, it's bloody cold. And this is the temperature where you talk, then you got to bring in the speech bubbles into the hall and thaw them out so you know what you're saying to each other. That breathing like that ice cold air can really affect your vocal cords. And I saw this happen to a number of callers, especially with the really, really cold temperatures, or even the really hot temperatures for that matter. The first thing they do is they want to warm up, so they get a hot cup of coffee. Try to avoid really, really strong temperature contrast. If you come out of 40 below zero and your vocal cords are cold because you're breathing in, your vocal cords are going to be slightly tight because they're cold. And a lot of people, they warm it up. It feels good. It's a short-term fix. Start slow. Have a glass of gargle a little bit of lukewarm water. Warm up your vocal cords before you get that. And you can do that in any number of ways, but don't just start singing and practicing and warming up. You see a lot of callers that say, if you're in Canada, you wear a scarf in the wintertime. It may look stupid all the time, but you wear a scarf because you want to keep your throat warm. It does make an effect. I'm not kidding when I say your voice, all the things that go into your voice, the breathing, the exercise, everything else, but your voice itself is your most important tool in the caller's toolbox, because without a voice, you have nothing. You cannot call, you cannot deliver your message without a voice. So protect it, look after it, exercise it. Yes, Yolanda.
So in the winter time, one of the things I do is not only put a scarf over my throat, but over my mouth when I go from the car to the building, and I try and go early so that my body can warm up properly before I have to use it. It's like a guitar or something. You wouldn't take a guitar in a cold car and then use it right away. You would warm it up.
I've been to dances where with my turntable, where I go and I set up the turntable and I put it there, and 15 minutes later, my turntable is still icy cold, but because of the temperature in the room, there's little condensation droplets building up on it. That's the temperature difference. So, I always kept a rag and everything there to wipe the turntable off, to wipe the records off, because condensation will build up. Same thing's happening. Not condensation buildup, but that effect of cold and hot. It does happen.
and
Not so much here in Australia.
I'm just working with a laptop which can't work with anything above 20 degrees. Whenever it works, it fails.
I had records like that whenever it got above 40 degrees. They failed. had a lot of real interesting modern sculpture called square dance records in hot temperatures.
I guess they had an ocean wave.
Take care, Daryl. Well, anyway, that was, like I said, that session was on breathing, or sorry, on the voice. Most of the information that's in there is just been, some of it's been updated. We've talked about some of the physiology and whatnot. I don't purport to be a master of voice and vocal learning. I know a little bit about it, but most of the information in there was written by Jim Mayo, who is an absolute genius as far as I'm concerned when it comes to calling and all things calling. And the information that he gives is very, very important. He's addressed a lot of things in there about understanding the tool, not how to use the tool and how to be a better singer and all that, but just understanding what the tool is and what you have to do to look after it. And that is, I cannot stress it enough, that is so important to look after your voice, because if you don't, you got nothing. So if nobody has anything else on that, oh, sorry, Yolanda, you had your hand up.
Oh, I was talking to some new callers the other day, and they were saying too that when you practice at home, your voice is one way. And then for new callers that are just getting up behind the mic, they get nervous and their vocal cords tighten, and then their pitch is different.
Yes.
You know?
One of the biggest errors, and you see this, I'll just take you through a progression here. As a new caller, what new callers do is when they hear a piece of music or they like a piece of music, they'll hum it and say, wow, I can do that song. I love that song. I love that tune. And they hum it. The tones that you get, it's still your vocal cords, but what you're hearing in your mind, especially with humming, is a whole different set of tones, and it's a whole different set of ranges. When you start practicing a song at home, generally you close yourself in a bedroom or a small office, you close the door, you put it on the turntable, and then you turn the music down and you turn your own, because it's too loud. You're not projecting. This is why I say when you're going to call and you're going to start calling, put the microphone away. You want to practice without the microphone. You've got to learn to project. You've got to learn to call without the microphone. The microphone is a tool to increase the loudness of your projection. It's not going to increase your ability to project. It's not going to increase your tone. It's not going to increase how you do that. All it is it's going to make whatever you send out louder. Put that microphone away and practice without the microphone. You've got to learn your delivery. You've got to learn your projection without it. That way, when you do have the microphone, you're going to have a good delivery. I use the expression garbage in, garbage out. And you get a lot of callers that will do this. They'll practice in their rooms and they sound absolutely fantastic with the microphone, and they've adjusted the bass and the treble and everything on the Hilton. And they're in a room that's if they're lucky, 3 meters by 3 meters or 10 feet by 10 foot room. And they call great in a 10 foot by 10 foot room. Put them in a 200 foot long hall, and suddenly they sound terrible because they're trying to call for a 10 foot room. Get rid of the microphone when you're practicing. Yes, Ross.
That's better. I find when I get nervous, I tend to hold back on my voice. So I've got to be very conscious of that. So if I'm nervous, I have to really focus on calling to the back of the room. And it doesn't mean shouting. It means projecting your voice. But nerves will hold you back. So
yeah, you're also one of these
all
callers.
you like, but
you're also one of these callers. When you're nervous, you come in and you hold yourself tight for that security, but you're actually stopping yourself from doing everything.
Well, I wasn't sure Friday night with my club. I was using a different song and different choreo, and because of it, I held back a bit. But I sang it last night. But I practiced that next morning and said, no, I've got to push this out. I've got to have confidence. I've just got to go for it. Much better delivery, much better. So
one of the things that happens with that is people say practice makes perfect. And it doesn't. Practice just makes you better at doing whatever you're doing. Perfection never happens. That's just my own opinion. But if you practice and you're confident with your delivery, and with what you want to say and what message you want to get out with, That's going to show on the microphone. And it's like Mark was saying, when I'm happy and I'm confident and I'm ready to go, I sound different. I feel different. And you're just hitting the nail right on the head with exactly the same thing. I was nervous about the delivery of this song. I wasn't sure if I was going to do it. And you made sure that, okay, I'm going to concentrate, and you're pulling yourself in. You're stopping yourself from relaxing, opening up the chest cavity, breathing, and just letting it out. And even if you make a mistake, if you let it out with confidence, chances are it's going to be a tonal note that you miss. It's not going to affect the dance at all. And the dancers will actually appreciate it more because your delivery will be live. It'll feel real to them. It's part of the show.
I'm not a singer. I think it was all right, wasn't it, Scotty? You were there.
Yeah, no, it came across right. No, that's fine. No problem at all.
Mhm.
You're muted, Mickey.
Anything new about your special dancer?
Yes, it was quite fun. Scotty's laughing. We were talking about him last night. I was all revved up to have a talk to him, and I do not know what he had for tea that night, but whatever he had, he should have every week. Because Friday night he swung properly, he had timing, and I thought, my God, what's happened to him?
Maybe he watched taping the recording of this session.
So I didn't even
It's
get a
interesting.
chance.
I know your dancer is a special case, but believe it or not, how you present yourself has a big effect on how people's dance as well. And
Well, it was actually,
no, I'm not talking about you've got a special case in this, and I understand that, but it does happen, and everybody's probably had one of those. That, you've had that night where, I know I'm delivering good solid material, I'm keeping it nice and easy and everything else, I'm making sure everybody gets through, but there's just no life on the floor. I had one of those dances when I was calling in Heidelberg. I was so well prepared and everything else that I was focused on my material and my delivery. I wasn't focused on the dancers. The dance went okay, but there was no life in the floor. Worst dance I ever called in my life, even though I didn't really make any major mistakes. It was the worst because there was no life in it. The best dance I ever called was the first one I ever did in Frankfurt. And I think that was Jim Harrington was the caller, the club caller. I think that's who it was anyway. And I was just starting out and I could not resolve the square. Half a dozen times I messed it up, and the dancers were all laughing. I felt they were laughing at me. I went out, he said, "You're going to be a good caller." Why? Because the dancers were having fun. They were enjoying themselves. They were laughing, they were giggling, they were singing the song. I recovered it on the singing call. He says, "It doesn't matter if you get up there and call Alaman left and right and left grand all night. If they're having fun and enjoying themselves, that's what makes a good caller. Your choreography is secondary. This is the medium for having fun. Having fun is what's important. And how you deliver it is just as important, because you control the mood of a floor with your voice. You add excitement with your voice. You can steady a floor with your voice. You can bring them up. You can bring them down. You can level them off. You are the one in command and control of that floor. Yes, Ross.
well, I did praise him up and I tried to boost his confidence. But one comment he made, he said, one of the other learners, he said, "Oh, I'm trying to partner the other learner because she needs a lot of help because she's really struggling." And one of the other learners said, "Well, that's calling the kettle back or whatever." Like,
Do you remember?
I guess he wanted to feel good about helping someone else, which boosted
Absolutely.
his ego. I mean, he
I don't know,
does need the ego boost.
Were you in the session that I gave on conflict resolution with Don Beck?
Can't remember. Might have.
It was just a few weeks back.
No, oh, hang on. No, I only do your sessions here. I don't do
One of the things that came up in that is there's always the recalcitrant dancer. There's always that one person or that you have to deal with that's always a problem. And one of the things dealing with dancers like that is using the community to control that activity. And in this case, that's, although it happened naturally, is essentially it is the dancers there recognize what was going on, but a condition was created where I've got to improve myself so that I can feel better and help this other person improve. And I can't help this person improve unless I get it right myself. That's a condition that you can also create as a caller or as a teacher within a group dynamic as well. You can create that and say, right, and I want, okay, you were doing this, right? And, you know, Roz, you were having trouble swinging. Say, okay, Roz, you had two different swings. There's two. The one is the buzz step, and the other one is the walk around step. And you're doing the walk around step really, really well. Can you show us how to do that? And suddenly, now you're that little bit in charge. Your dancer in particular is one that likes to be in charge and doesn't like anybody telling him what to do. Now he's got something where he's in charge that's really not going to affect the dynamic, but it's created a fix for itself. Keep in mind how that happened, and you can use that same technique with a group dynamic to deal with problem children.
Only thing I've got to watch with him, I mean, I don't mind him helping, but he can help the wrong way. Like,
yeah,
he can throw her off. And then a couple of times she wasn't sure, and it's because he pushed her the wrong way. She was going the right way, and so it's a fine balance. Calling's a fine balance.
It's even, I have the opportunity to next Saturday having a whole square graduating into basic, not SSD. And with some other clubs around it. And they've been struggling all through the corona. And we happen to have 8 people, 4 men, 4 women. So we couldn't even use our angels. I mean, it's wonderful just to see those people. They do not depend on the other ones. They do whatever they are told. They dance along, and they can do the whole mainstream program. And considering that they've been exposed to a few older callers, they can even do some parts of former basic because they've learned some, and they are graduating next week. And it's seeing how nice it is to just hearing them listening to other callers and, oh, we've never done that before. No. But that's the point of it.
One of the things that I really like is, like, this is a personal opinion. If I'm doing a demonstration, I don't like having, or sorry, if I'm doing a class, I prefer doing without angels. I don't particularly like angels helping out. That said, depending on who you're calling for, you've got that. They are great for fillers, but I don't use angels as teachers. I like to use the new dancers when I'm giving a demonstration, that kind of stuff. But one of the advantages of that is if you don't have angels, you really understand if you're teaching right. If you do have angels, the angels are going to correct and dance the way they want or the way that they were taught, and it helps you get that message across rather than you actually getting the message across. And it's really an eye-opener watching dancers, especially if you don't have any angels on the floor and you're trying to teach a movement like, I don't know, spin chain through or something like that. Trying to explain it.
That's not basic.
Yeah. Okay. Trying to teach swing or trying to teach flutter wheel or whatever. Trying to explain it and watching their reactions. And if they're not doing what you think, then chances are you may need to change how you are actually doing it. I got that message from, actually, again, ECTA, when you were testing white badge and black badge. One of the evaluation criteria was you were given a movement down off the floor by the panel of judges, if you will, your panel of peers that are not your peers. And you're taught, right, you're going to go and teach this movement. It might be peel off. It might be a mainstream floor. It might be a basic hall, but you're going to teach the movement peel off, or you're going to teach fan the top, or you're going to teach spin the top, whatever it is. You're not allowed to say the movement. You're not allowed to say what the movement was. You're not allowed to do it, but you have to get the dancers through it. Then you have to use it. And then you can tell them what it is. And if you can't get them through that movement without saying the name of it, you're in trouble. And what I found was, and I saw this on many, many callers that were testing, the dancers on the floor thought they knew what the caller wanted, and you'd hear the whisper, okay, he's doing peel off. Oh, he's doing peel atop, peel atop, peel atop. And the dancers are whispering what they think you want instead of what you're doing. It's a real eye opener for yourself.
Touch a quarter, peel off is a nice combination. Yeah.
Yes.
But okay, Michael could.
Mickey?
Oh yeah, I go along with what you said. I don't like the angels to be my deputies when teaching the calls. I said, I'm the marshal, I don't need no deputies. But for one thing, the angels are very important, especially in our Munich area where we have a lot of clubs. And we have class and club nights on one evening. You need the angels to build the social bounds to the club.
Yeah. Okay.
And this is important for the socializing. This is where the club is needed and the angels are needed. I do not like it for teaching, but usually before we start a class, I tell the club members that they just should be there like true angels. They're always there, but they never talk. Right.
And they don't try to teach me how to teach the calls.
Yeah. It's one of the things, like I was very, very lucky when I moved to Ontario because, well, the club I started in Alberta was started fresh, didn't have dance. I had dancers that were there, but it was a brand new club, so it was not a big issue. But when I was in Ontario, both the Mississippi Squares and the Spin Chainers, the angels themselves, didn't call them angels, but the club themselves, they took it upon themselves to make sure that there was always a full square of dancers. Their job was to set up the hall, to prepare the coffee, to do the kitchen work, to, do all this stuff. If there was a potluck or a meals coming in or things like that, they would organize the kitchen and they would come out and fill in if they were needed on the floor to fill squares. And that's all they did. And it was absolutely fantastic. One of the only thing I ever had to criticize once, and that was taking them aside and having a chat that says, I would rather they come to me, is one of the couples was having problems with one of the movements. And another one of the angel couples went and took that couple and they were trying to teach it to him and explain it to him off to the side. And that's the only thing that I ever had trouble with them. And I just said, hey, if they have an issue with the movement, bring them to me. Or if somebody comes to you and asks you how to do it, bring them up to me and I'll walk you through it. I'd rather I do that they come to me than you do it, because I may be looking at something different. I may be looking at left spin the top from facing couples or something like that. Whatever. I just use that because that was a discussion we had beforehand. Yeah. I don't like angels. I don't like if I'm doing a open dance or something like that. I get this offer all the time. Oh, we'll bring a couple squares down and help you with your open party night or your demonstration that you're doing or your fun night. No, I don't want that. I want the dancers to have fun and experience it right from scratch. I don't want, excuse me, but lampshades and frou-frous coming into a hall full of non-dancers for a fun party night and saying, this is what we do and here's the demonstration, because it will turn everybody off. I want to turn them on and then let them experience the rest of the world as they grow into it. But what works for you works for you. My way is not always the right way. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, tough for angels, where this guy is walking out of the church and he's being pushed and he falls down, hurts himself a little bit, but right next to him, a statue from the tower crashes down on him and almost killed him, right? And there's this angel sitting there and he said, did you push me? I said, yes, I saved your life. I said, that means you're my angel? I said, yes. You're about to take care about me? Yes. Well, where were you when I got married? So it's hard for angels,
Yeah. I was wondering where you were going with that. Yes, Ross.
That's one thing I remember when I first learnt square dancing. I think we were only dancing probably about 10 weeks, 8-10 weeks. And I learnt for my husband and I to split up. We actually did first and last dance together, but in between we didn't, because we found we were relying on each other. So that's something to watch with learners as well. If they're partners and always dancing together,
Yeah.
they can weaken each other. They can rely on each other to be pushing them around. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah.
And
For
there
me,
are good
I-
angels and there are bad angels. A good angel shouldn't be talking, and
Yeah,
I
for
just
me,
use eye
one of the
contact.
greatest things that I ever had for me, again, is a lesson I got from Kim in Germany. We started every evening in a Sicilian circle. And, you know, you come in because we had the dancers, we had enough dancers there to dance. And sometimes we had even numbers of couples. Sometimes we had odd numbers of couples. Sometimes somebody would come in late. We'd start in the Sicilian circle. And if a couple came in late, they could just join in, pick a direction, and we pick them up as we go. Very, very easy to deal with. But it was also good because it allowed me at the beginning of each evening, I'd spend that 20-minute Sicilian circle, no singing call, to warm the dancers up, to review all the movements. Most stuff was 2-couple stuff anyway. If I wanted to do a Ferris wheel, I could just work with the next couple, tell the dancers, coach them through it, whatever. But I could also break up and review when I had couples that were totally dependent and reliant on each other. Easy to break up. You know, ladies chain, pass through, move to the next, veer to the left, veer to the right, move to the next. Now they're so far apart, they're not going to get back together easy, and they're dancing, but they started with each other and they're no longer reliant on each other. And I didn't care who was there. And I always ended it up with a big circle, Alaman left, right and left grand, say hi to everybody in the hall, all the way around. You meet the one you started with, promenade, find a chair and take a short break. Every evening started like that. And it become part of the process, but every evening was also a good thing for review, a good thing for catching, for warming the dancers up, not introducing anything, but reinforcing all those concepts. But as you say, also for setting the template of these people that are totally reliant on each other, that they can dance without each other. And that way through the rest of the evening, they're warmed up, they're dancing, they're consistent, they've got it. Some people want to dance together in a square all the time. I never break them up. If they get up on the floor to dance together, I'm not going to break them up because they're going to dance together. I call heads square through. Guess what? They're not together anymore. And I do a lot of 2-couple stuff. Those are just little tricks with judgment and experience that you play with after a while.
Just recording my nowadays basic club, but I have more or less wanted them to. There are two couples and 2 couples who are not couples, but they are still a complete square. So we haven't had a chance to put in angels. There are 8 people, 4 guys, 4 ladies. Wonderful, perfect. And they love when they square up in a way that I could recognize them.
Yep.
Because they love that. Yeah, let's put it up. Yeah, I think I'll fix that. So that that's and of course I don't mind it because they should be able to dance with anyone.
Every caller and every club is going to find what works for them. And when you find something that works, write it down and pass it on. May not work for everybody, but if it works for one, it could work for another.
But we wouldn't probably even allow them to dance as a couple anytime or every. We'll fix that in some way or another.
Mhm.
Either by telling them that no, you go to that square or you go to the other square, but you shouldn't be dancing as a couple because that's not helping any of you.
Yeah. The biggest mistake I see with callers a lot of the time is, let's say I've got a square of dancers and we've got Joe and his wife, Janet, hypothetical names. And they get up on the square and they're weak dancers. And the first thing the caller does, or the caller's partner or the angels does, is, oh, we're just going to break you 2 up so that you can dance together. And great. So they swap with a corner. They swap the ladies over in a corner. And guess what happens? Heads square through. Now Joe's back with Janet. And the problems start. Leave them together. Unless you're doing something with that couple in the middle, they're never going to dance with each other. Or unless you do a lead to the right, well, great, do it. Swing through and circulate. They're not going to be dancing with each other. But if you try to break them up beforehand, you're going to keep putting them together. You're going to keep putting them together to dance until you're ready to resolve. Unless, you know, with practice and judgment, yes, you will learn how to separate them and move them around. But it's always a good idea if a couple gets on the floor as a couple, leave them as a couple. If you get two couples and they're corners that can't dance, and if you've got the room, then that's where you get innovative. Heads pass through, or do a scatter promenade, find two, let's do some two couples up, circle up four, find two more, you know, and just play around with the floor till you get the combination and then get back into squares. Whatever you need to do, you'll find a way to make it successful for them. But you want to do it in a way that's fun, entertaining, without saying, oh, Roz and John, you're dancing. Oh, you two can't dance. I'm going to break you two up. You know, and suddenly I put you guys back at corners, and the first thing to head square through. Now John's back with Roz. I'm just picking on you guys. It's hypothetical because your name is first and foremost on my screen here. Yes, Roz.
I mean, you would never force a couple to split up anyway.
Some callers, but
Well, you
worse,
shouldn't.
some
Oh,
dancers
yes.
and angels
Oh, yes.
do that. They do it.
Oh,
And
yes.
Like I said, that was one of the rules that I made with my clubs. And like I said, I was very blessed. Two fantastic square dance clubs, the Spin Chainers and the Mississippi Squares, but they danced and they said, right, we may run the club, we run the executive, we run the events, but you run the floor. That was my condition. He says, absolutely, you run the floor. You're in charge of what happens there. You're in charge of the teaching. You're in charge of the calling. You're in charge of the programming. You're in charge of the class. When they graduate, all that. They had nothing to do with that. And I said, I was very fortunately blessed to be in that position. But yeah, it does happen. You get dancers, especially angels or dancers, that think that they're helping by breaking couples up, and they're not. And you've got to make it clear to those couples that do that. Don't do that. I will do that because I can do it a lot better than you can.
It's interesting, the guy that I had trouble with when they first came to us, because they started off at Scotty's, the first thing they said when they walked in the door, don't let us dance together. Partly, I think, because they argued with each other, and it was like, we're not good to dance together.
Yeah, unless you can put them in different squares, keep them together when they get on the floor. Yes, Mickey.
One thing which I've been doing for the past, I would say 10, 15 years now, we had a meeting at Color Lab enhancing sociability. And I forwarded this procedure, which I've been using. When first night they come in, I call them first contactors. I have a big circle with everybody getting up, and I don't even mention that we're dancing, whatever. Don't scare anybody, but have a big circle and everybody comes up. And then we put the new ones in the middle of the circle and greet everybody, welcome them. And then I have them pick an angel from the outer circle. So, and he's gonna be their sponsor and their mentor for the evening. And we get in squares, and they keep on that first night, and maybe even on the second night, we do the same procedure if we get new people in. They keep in the same square with the same persons. And what they now have is they have their place in the group. And so this is already one thing where you can split up couples for a very easy way, where there's nothing you have to get personal or whatever, or have to talk. It just happens. Okay. Yep. And so you have them split apart, and anything negative which is between them because he didn't didn't do the laundry or the dishes, or was
it's always his fault.
Was in Zoom meetings, and he did not take care of the grass.
Yeah, I was just looking at that.
Whatever, that is just not in between those two because they're always far apart, right? And that's a simple way. One way to splitting them up, and the other way is to give everyone its place in the group, be a member of the team. And I think that is the most important thing. And ever since I ran that routine, I guess it's going to be forwarded by Color Lab anyway, or the meeting is online with Mike Seastorm and Jerry Junk, and that I have never had the saying, "Oh, we're just watching, we're just looking, maybe next time," because there was no way to escape. And they had their place in the team. There was no one, my partner has left, I don't know where he went now, or my square is full or whatever. They've got their place in the group. And that's very, very important to make them feel comfortable.
I will say with that, Mickey, though, this is one of those examples of, if this works for you, great. And it is a great idea. I will also tell you that I know of at least 3 clubs and 2 states in the US where if you did that, you would lose your entire floor. Nobody would come back the next week because they come as a partner. They want to dance as a partner. I know a lot of young couples that will come to a dance, and the first thing you do is you break them up and get them dancing with somebody and their partner somewhere else. They didn't come to dance with that person. They came to dance with their partner. Even if when you get them on the square, they're not dancing, but in their mind, they're still dancing with their partner. They're ending with their partner they came, and they will take serious offense to that. But that all falls into cultural awareness. It's no different than, staring somebody in the eyes if you're in Japan, or all these other kinds of things. But if that works, and it's a great idea, and this is one of the reasons why I say, if you have an idea that works, try it. What Mickey's talking about in the social connections in the committee, yeah, it works. And that may work in 18 out of 20 areas. In 2 areas, it may not work, but they may have something else that works. Try that too. Don't ever throw ideas out just because it doesn't work for you, because it may not work for a whole bunch of different reasons for you in that spot, but it might work that way somewhere else. Germany has a very different mentality, as does Sweden, when it comes to dancing, square dancing, or social dancing. It's a social atmosphere, and it's very much like the US was. You go to a dance, you had a dance card. You danced the first dance, you did the break before the meal, you danced the last dance with the person that came with. But the rest of it was a social function, and you dance with everybody and anybody. And that's why you had a dance card, to make sure that everybody got that. And you would book these things in advance. That's long gone, because, the same reason we all lock our doors at night, and the same reason we don't talk to strangers on the street. Different things change. Don't throw a good idea away just because it doesn't work for you there. It might work somewhere else.
Other thing you've got to watch, if you've got a big club, you've got more people to actually use. If it's only a small club of 1 set or 2 sets, which is ours, sometimes 1.5, you've just got to deal with what you've got.
Yeah.
And it makes it a bit hard if you've got like 5 women learning and you've only got 1 set. I mean, you could do the Sicilian, but it's hard with a small group.
Everybody will adapt to their circumstances. That's part of nature. You adapt to your environment. It's only people that adapt their environment to themselves. And that, unfortunately, is why square dancing is becoming an extinction, because if we look at callers, we're trying to adapt the dancers to our environment rather than us adapting to the dancing environment. And we've been doing that for so long that we're forcing ourselves into extinction. We're the only species on the planet that, well, no, we're not the only species, but we're the most dominant species on the planet that adapts the environment to our needs. Well, if we extend that metaphor, callers for the last 20 years or so have been adapting square dancing to meet the callers' needs, rather than callers adapting to meet the dancers' needs and giving what they want. There's so many great ideas out there. Don't throw them away. What you find with 1 square or 6 couples or 5 couples, what Mickey might find with 6 or 8 squares on the floor or 4 squares on the floor, what works works. And you may be in 2 years in the position where Mickey's in right now, and you got 8 squares Bang, great. Try his idea. Try it out for an evening, everybody dance. I call it a big dance. John, you've heard this when I was down in Adelaide, right? Ladies' choice, men's choice. Everybody now dance with somebody you have not danced with yet. Okay, 5th tip. Now, okay, I'm going to give you a little bit of extra time. I want everybody to get somebody they have not danced with and get in a square with people you have not danced with yet tonight. Now you get everybody dancing with somebody new and trying to find a square that with people you haven't danced with. It's virtually impossible if you have a hall with 100 dancers. It's hard to get into a square that you have not danced with anybody there at all. And I don't care if they're in it or if they pair up. It's just a joke. And then I start the music and they all just go to wherever the nearest square is anyway. But it's that social interaction that you make light of a joke and away you go. What works for you works for you. I know at the convention in Adelaide, the thing that got me was a grand march every tip. It was a real shock to a lot of people because I don't do that. We had the grand march for the evening, and there was one other march, and that was, I can't remember what that was for, but there was only 2 in the entire evening. Yeah, there was 2. We opened the festival and then with one, and then we had one at the start of the big dance on the evening. Those are the only 2 grand marches because I don't like grand marches. I think it's an absolute stupid waste of time because you spend 8-10 minutes getting everybody on the floor, then you spend another 4 minutes getting them walking around, and then you get them in a square, and then you talk to them and you address them. Open a dance like that, but to do that for every tip is a total waste of time in my book. I didn't do it. And the response I got the second day when we were doing the caller training sessions and then from the dancers was, I really like that. Oh, why aren't you doing the grant? It was so diverse because this is what they had. This is what they were comfortable with. It was a diversion. But I've also noticed from what I've heard is you guys have cut back on your grand marches a lot because it works. You still do them. You still do a lady's choice. You still, this kind of thing for a grand march, but it's not every tip anymore because you lose the time. Different strokes, different changes.
I think one of the reasons they did that was so people wouldn't stack sets. And like if you've got to get up for a set, you're supposed to walk up and go to the nearest set. But people would actually pre-arrange sets, which I think is all right for one dance.
Anybody that thinks that dancers don't stack a grand march to get in the square they want is deluding themselves.
They race up the front. I remember when we first learnt, we got up the front and I heard people run behind us. And I looked and it was a clicky group. And I looked behind and I thought, oh my God, they're running to dance with us. And afterwards we said as a joke, we must have made it as dancers for the clicky group to want to dance with us. But we weren't clicky.
The best one I ever did, I did one of these in Alberta. And they were stacking the march. I said, okay, now we're going to do this just a little bit differently. Okay. And I'll bring them around. Right. And of course, we've got the 2s coming up because they did a single, then a double, then a foursome, and then an 8. And I read, okay, so first couple left, next couple left, next couple right, next couple left, next couple right, next couple right, next couple right, next couple left. I was just mixing them up like that. And they were going, what the hell? And of course, suddenly the set isn't what they wanted because the set wasn't stacked anymore. Or if you really want to have fun, you go, right. Grand march, there we go. There's your set grid. Now, everybody count off 1, 2, right. Even numbers, spread apart, trailing numbers, step between them. And then we do the grand march, got boys together, girls together. And they get first couple left, next couple right. You got different partners, you got all sorts of different things. Do what you can. It's just a little different. Me personally, I hate grand marches.
I do agree. It wastes a lot of time.
Sorry?
No, it does waste a lot of time. I agree with you. I don't like it. I think I'd rather just get up.
A grand march should be, where you have they call it a dress sets, but
yeah,
your first tip of the big evening festival is there. You do the grand march. There's a walk in. Your clubs you get to show off your things. There's the banners. Great. You do your dress sets. Good. put them off to the side. There's your tip. That's it. It's done. From here on in, everything else is just have a good time. But again, that's my opinion. That works for me. That's what I like to do. But if I go call for a festival where they want grand marches, I'll do grand marches because that's what they want.
If you're in Sweden or in Germany, you'll probably never do a grand march unless it's a sort of graduation thing.
Yeah.
I know there's a German couple that comes out here quite regularly for our nationals, and they always do first and last dance together, split themselves up. And they said, we do it in Germany at home. We never dance together at the beginning, only at the beginning and only at the end. I thought that's good.
Well, I can, somebody said this the other day, but it's going to be what we call American square dancing is very soon going to become international European square dancing, because it's just not going to be, it's going to be the only place where it exists in a while, and then it's going to spread from there. I hope not. We'll see what happens. I'm building a house in a new town with about 2,000 people demographic, and I'm hoping I get into that house early next year. And I'm going to hopefully start a club which is brand new. There's no dances. Like I said, the nearest club to me is 400 kilometers one way or 400 kilometers plus the other way.
Would you build a barn?
Now there's a community center there. So I'm hoping. We'll see what happens. I'll let you know in a couple of years to see what happened.
Anyway, I must go. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
We'll catch you next week.
I went for a trip around Australia and in 2008, and when I was in Darwin, somebody found out that I was a square dance caller, and they asked me to go to the social dance club in Darwin. So for 2 weeks, I did a half-hour session on introduction to square dancing. And I covered most of the movements that were on Brian Hotchkiss' #1 teaching CD. And when I left the CD with them. And apparently, from last thing I heard, that one of the ex-square dancers that used to live up there near Humpty Doo rang me and said they're still using that CD. So they're still dancing square dancing since 2008.
Wouldn't surprise me.
And they're only using those movements. I often wonder, they call it social square dancing, the SSD program, but why do we need to do all position? Why not just keep it the simplest formations that we can use that would be easily taught in the 12 weeks that you're talking about? And why extend it? If you're going to have a social dance, people could come quite regularly and even miss some and still be able to dance. And if it's anything like a club in Brisbane where they only use the mainstream, the simple movements of mainstream, that club's one of the biggest in Brisbane, or has been. I believe it's been shut down for a few weeks at the moment. The caller's wife has just passed away. And I heard that the contract for the hall runs out in June, and they're wondering whether he'll keep going. And he's one of the longest standing callers in Australia.
I have no answer, but the issue that you have with the SSD program is that's what it was designed for, was standard position, fun, social dancing, easy to teach. It didn't exclude left-hand stuff. It didn't exclude, mirror symmetry. In fact, it included that. It did not include extended definitions. It did not include the rest of the program. It did not include, all the technical aspects of it. It was designed as a dance program, which is a standalone, and all the rest of that stuff was designed that if you want to have a workshop, you can do, and you can play with recycle from left-hand waves if that's what you want to do. If you wanted to do Dixie style one night, it was a one-night thing and then it was out of the program. If you're going to do it another night, you introduce it again that night. It was a standalone program that was designed for that social thing. Personally, I think there's too much in it for 12 weeks. That's just my opinion. But then again, I haven't called it, so I can't judge it. I do know that of, I'd say 7 or 8 out of 10 people that are doing the social square dance program are not doing the social square dance program. They're giving it lip service. They're using it to fill their halls and stack up. I know of 6 clubs that are using, oh, we're doing the social square dance program. Yeah. And how many classes you got? Oh, we're starting our second group. Good turnout. Yeah. Well, what's the first group doing? Oh, they're dancing with the plus group now. Because that's not social square dancing. That's just taking a shortcut to fill the halls. My honest opinion, I put with those of you that are members of Color Lab with the whole logs and everything else, I wrote, the social square dance program has not been given the time or the effort that it needs to get judged and evaluated properly. That's my opinion. You know, some people it'll work, others it won't. Yes, Mickey.
Yeah, I think that the SSD program, they're not consequent enough. They opened the door for everything. Reading the prefix and everything, there is extended application in there. There there is the use of any other call you may want to wish. They write it down as your favorite call. You don't have to miss it, just workshop it. So the door is open to do almost anything you want. And it's not so like you have a 50 call program with standard application and that's it. And if it would be, then it would be probably easier, but that way they already opened.
Yeah, I think I need to correct that a bit,
the
Mickey,
box of
because
Pandora.
the program itself is written for the standard applications. The question on what is standard application, what is not, is still a big gray area for a lot of people, what is standard. But extended application, like for instance, swing through from a right-hand wave, okay, left swing through from a left-hand wave, those are standard applications. A left-hand wave, right hand, left square through.
This is a symmetry.
Hang on, Mick. Those are standard applications. If I'm going to do swing through from a left-hand ocean wave where I have the center start, that's an extended application. That is a talk through, and the program is written that if you're going to use that material, and you're not prohibited from using that material after they've done the SSD program, this stuff is introduced, but it's not supposed to be called without being introduced or given the walkthrough. If you're going to do box the nat or Dixie style or spin the top, none of which are on the SSD program, that is a workshop. You use it for that night. And you introduce it, you teach it or walk them through it. They can dance it that night. But if you come back next week and you're going to do spin the top again, you introduce it, you do it, and you use that program. That's the way, you know, when I was talking with Jerry, that's the way it was designed. It wasn't stopping you from doing that, but it was not supposed to be, here's the SSD program, now we're going to use the rest, now we're going to teach you the rest of the mainstream, now you go dance mainstream and we start a new SSD class. It was never designed. It's a standalone product. Unfortunately, it's not being used as a standalone product.
I think they should have, if you want to be consequent and really put something new on, they should have stood with just 50 calls, period.
Yep.
The problem I see is that, at least in some parts of Europe, I know that Germany has it, and in Sweden, we've had our basic program, which Color Lab tried to make a big thing of for at least the last 60 years, but they never used it in the US. So we use basic, and we have it for one complete year, and then we have the mainstream classes, and then we have the plus classes. But the problem is that they have first defined a basic program which they haven't used themselves.
Yeah, there's a thing that's written in the Color Lab program that says Color Lab recognizes regional differences.
Mm-hmm.
And I wish somebody would throw this out that, okay, Color Lab has a very good 50 movement program. It's called the basic program.
One or
It
two?
is, hang on, no, it's called the basic program. It's 50 movements. It is a good dance program used properly and effectively. It's a very innovative, and there is so much material. You could dance basic for 20 years and still not be redundant.
Right.
Okay? It's a very, very good program. Now, add to that expression, Color Lab recognizes regional differences. Well, here's a regional difference. In the region of Europe, basic is a program that stands alone and is danceable. That's our regional difference. We dance the program as it's written. Now, you did that, you'd find a hilarious uproar, very much like you find the offense and the opposition against the SSD program. You're going to find these kinds of things happening because callers.
There's an offense.
Oh no, there is a lot of offense to the SSD program. Callers don't like change. Or sorry, let me rephrase that. Callers don't mind sudden change. They just want 10 to 15 years notice. Okay, and they want somebody else to prove. They want somebody else to prove that it works well before they're going to try it, but nobody wants to try it and give it to them. Meanwhile, this is what we're comfortable with. This is what we do. This is what works. So this is what we're going to stick doing. I don't judge the SSD program because I've never called the SSD program. I have objectively analyzed it and I can talk freely about it, but I can't say whether I like it or don't like it because I've never used it. My personal opinion is I never saw the need for it. To me, it was a program that was designed for callers, not for dancers. It was designed that way because too many callers were too damn lazy to learn how to call and use the basic program properly, effectively, innovatively, and give the dancers a good time because their focus was too much on themselves as callers or impressing another caller, not on the dancers having a good time. That's just a personal opinion. I can't evaluate the two in a practical application because I've never called the SSD program. But and I'm still offensive. I'm not against it. I'm all for anything that works, bringing dancers on the floor and giving them a good time. And if the SSD program works, great. But I've yet to find any caller effectively use that. And that's their program. And even while he was alive, Jerry's story, I will include in that number because having danced with Jerry and everything else, he has the SSD program, but he uses spin the top all the time when he's calling elsewhere because that's the program. There's no place that's catering. Even at the national convention, you were there, Mickey. Was there an SSD hall?
I was at the national. The national is gonna.
Or sorry, at the Color Lab convention.
Yeah, we did some SSD. There was some SSD dancing as well.
Okay, but at the national convention, I don't know if we've only got Mark here left from the States. They didn't have, from what I was told, they didn't have an SSD hall, but SSD has been around now for what, 3 years? Been accredited, they had a basic hall shoved in a corner somewhere with the desk pushed aside in a little classroom or a little room somewhere. Who called it that? We'll get all the callers that are brand new that don't call, and then we'll just rotate a few people. Oh, but we need Mickey because Mickey calls challenge, so we're going to get Mickey to call. In the big show in the mainstream, he'll do plus, advanced, and challenge, and we'll get Joe Bloggins and Wendy Bloggins that are just starting to call and don't have they'll call in the basic hall because they don't know how to call, but we got to give them some mic time. Well, quite frankly, I would put Joe Bloggins that doesn't know how to call. Let's put him in the plus hall and the challenge hall, and we'll get Mickey down in the basic hall to give the basic dancers a good time so they know what the hell this is all about and can use the program and give them fun. And you know what? What you'll find is when you get your favorite callers calling in the basic hall, all those dancers are going to come from the plus hall to dance to their caller because he can give them a good time. But again, that's just an opinion.
I agree completely.
As somebody once said, opinions are, excuse the language, but opinions are like asses. Everybody has one. It's the same thing that comes out all the time. I'm not rude, but I'm never all that politically correct sometimes. You get used to it after a while. Well, if nobody has anything else they want to discuss, I think we should call it a day. It's actually getting to be kind of sunny and hopefully my lawn is dry. I might actually have to go out and cut the lawn.
Yeah,
Did I mention that Ukraine won the Eurovision?
yeah. You wrote it in the chat.
Surprise!
No, sir, not surprise.
I'm still trying to figure out why Ireland didn't make it.
Well,
I wonder.
Ireland got better than Australia, I think.
But at least there's one consistency, and this is Germany again, last place.
Yep, definitely last place.
Now,
And
I do have a question. Even though they won, were you actually able to understand what they were singing, or was it all about the costume and the stupidity of what they were wearing?
Yep.
I got a question to Mel because I don't know. I think it's the second or third time that Australia was with the European contest. How did they get to Europe? Are you in the EU?
Well, the Eurovision Song Contest, I think it was about 15 years ago, became an international. For instance, why is Russia in the Eurovision Song Contest? Because Russia is actually part of
now.
Asia.
They're
No,
not
I
now,
mean-
but
No, Moscow is Europe.
it's
Fu-
Europe.
fundamentally, they're part of Asia.
Yeah. Oh,
So-
everything.
Israel has been
everything
part of
around.
Eurovision.
Yeah.
Morocco has taken part in Eurovision.
Yep. I think South Africa was in it a while back.
No, not South Africa, but Egypt and Lebanon. But they were disqualified when they wouldn't broadcast the Israeli song, so they were thrown out again. I think it was when there was some kind of 50 years memorial, and someone noticed that Australia has broadcasted the thing that they were included, and then they've been there since then.
Okay, now this was a serious question. I thought maybe because they belong to the Commonwealth, over this one, more or less like being with Great Britain, that they would have an access to.
No, it's just that they were broadcasting it for so long, so
Okay,
they could.
interesting.
But when you ask about it, can England participate in the Eurovision Song Contest after Brexit?
UK came second.
Oh,
Yeah, because UK includes Scotland.
Well, and they still belong to Europe.
I think Eurovision was almost earlier than the European Union.
Yep. Well, in the
okay.
50s,
So
we
Australia
didn't have-
has been part of the Eurovision Song Contest for more than 30 years now.
And not taken part of.
It was in. Sorry.
Not taken part of.
No, I'm just saying.
It, but
Yeah, it's been broadcast,
Yeah, just for
but they
the-
were invited to
last-
submit an entry in 2015 for the
Yeah.
60th, and then they've kept them in there.
Mhm.
I wonder what would happen if Australia actually won that.
Well, then the next
it will
contest-
probably be broadcasted from Sweden.
So what do we got? We've got
now the fun
China,
part is going to be
China, the Faroe Islands, Gibraltar, Kazakhstan, Lebanon, Qatar.
Lebanon has been allowed once.
Yeah, I know. These are ones that have
Yeah.
participated. China, Faroe Islands, Gibraltar, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, Lebanon, Liechtenstein. Well, Liechtenstein's there. Qatar, Soviet Union when it was going. Tunisia, Wales as a country. What do we got here? Australia, Azerbaijan, Cyprus.
Azerbaijan was they always have a nice tunes.
Good today. Now
Israel,
Which
Latvia,
is definitely
Malta,
not Europe.
Morocco.
but the serious
Remember?
question will be, every time you are the winner, you are the host for the next time. So now Ukraine is the winner. Will
Yep.
they host it, and where,
Yep.
and with security? I mean, this is a big event. And
Yep.
how risky would it be? And hopefully everything is going to be over with that war. But those are
Algeria, Egypt, Jordan, Lebanon, Libya, Tunisia, and Vatican City. That'd be interesting.
Vatican City has never competed though.
No, but they are eligible.
Yeah.
But you know what the fun part is? So Morocco, Algeria, Turkey, the Asian part, they have all had squadrons clubs in ECTA.
Hmm?
So they belong to Europe for a long time.
Yeah. What has happened to the Russian Squadrons Club now, who are part of ECTA?
They're still part of ECTA, but I don't know what happened with them. No, not part of ECTA. They're part of the EWCC, but not ECTA. We don't have Russian members in ECTA.
and they're sponsored. But on the other hand, I had talked with Hannah, I think it was last week. They're having severe problems over there, and they have to be careful when forwarding information or whatever. They try to keep the groups together, whatever, but it's pretty tough from what I've understood.
Olga Krasnikov, she still posts on what they're doing and some of their stuff that they're doing, but it has really, really been curtailed over there. So. Anyway, I think we're going to call it a day, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Take care.
All right, thanks, guys. Take it easy. Catch you next
Bye-bye.
week.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.